Hi, I'm Jory Prum, and I do sound, all kinds of sound stuff, everything but composition actually, for games and film and other things.
So what does that involve, all of this
Uh,
sound?
what does that involve? That can be dialogue production, recording, editing, mastering, implementation of dialogue, sound effects, creation, sound design, implementation of the sounds, what they're now calling procedural sound. I didn't know it had a name before. I just made lots of layers that randomized. Mixing and editing music, recording part replacement and whatnot for trying to make synth scores sound a lot more real by adding live musicians. Basically everything. The only thing I don't do is compose or do live. Yeah, so I went to CalArts, and it was absolutely the right place for me. I was at that time a composer. I was really eager to write scores for animated shorts. That's what I was most interested in, which took me to CalArts. And so I started off as a composer, and then my goal was to always also bridge into the live action film department, or actually the animation department. But since I don't draw, they told me I couldn't be in animation. So I applied to the live action school, and so I basically, somebody told me at one point that as a film sound person, the most important thing to know was basically how to fix everybody else's problems. So I set about taking every class you could imagine. I took video production classes, I took film production classes, I learned how to online edit, offline edit, negative cutting. I mean, you name it, I did it. And usually, like, what I would do is I would work with the animators, I would write scores or do the sound effects for their films, and then I would basically push them out of the way and edit the sound onto their film because they didn't know how to use the 3/4 inch AB roll decks. So I just learned how to do everything, and that was definitely helpful. Yeah, at the end of '98, I got a job at LucasArts. It's funny, I had not wanted to work in video games before that because I was unimpressed with the quality that video games were shipping with sound-wise. I had been for a job interview at another game company in Southern California, and basically everybody sat in a little fishbowl with headphones all day and shipped 8-bit 11K sounds. I went, no, I don't think that's my world. I'd rather do film. And then LucasArts offered me a job as a sound assistant, and I always figured out. When I was a kid, I figured out if I ever wanted to escape Southern California as a sound engineer, I was going to have to move to the Bay Area and work for Lucas. So they offered me a job. I snapped at it. So.
And you started out on Sam and Max, was it then?
Well, actually, there I started off on X-Wing Alliance. That was my first LucasArts game. So I worked on 14 titles in 2 years. Basically, I worked on all the Episode 1 shipping titles. So Racer, the Phantom Menace, Star Wars Insider's Guide, Episode 1 edition. All the Lucas Learning games minus, I think, 2. So Pit Droids and Jar Jar's Journey and Star Wars Early Learning Activity Center, and just a wide variety of things. And then I stuck around long enough to work on things like Escape from Monkey Island, which was awesome. Sam Max didn't happen for me until I was working with Telltale as a freelancer. Escape from Monkey Island. So I was in charge of doing all the ambiences. Basically, they told me, you need to figure out how few ambiences do we need, because we have limited resources. Larry the O was going to be mixing the ambiences I created with the final score as created by Michael Land. And so they would all get merged together because the way iMuse worked was that everything would stream off the disk while you were playing, so the sound effects could be loaded in memory. So basically, it was streamed off the disk in real time, which meant that you could only have 2 channels happening at a time, because you'd need 4. If I remember correctly, you'd have 2 channels for one piece of music and 2 channels for another, so you could crossfade between different states. So I came up with basically a list of 82 ambiences that needed to be created, and then I arranged to go places and record them, and spend a lot of time just recording all kinds of cool stuff, like the bunkers out at the Headlands, which I got special permission to go inside of, and China Camp, which is a natural preserve near here, and just all over the place. I went into Mission Church over in San Rafael, and just lots of different things that we could use, and then built tons and tons of ambiences. handed them over to Larry the O. He did all the mixing with all the final music states, and then that went into the game. And from that point, I started doing sound design on the project. So I contributed to some things, like I remember I did the sushi boat in the Lua bar, which was fun because it has a bunch of cool sounds. Sure. So I got to be involved with Grimm 2 different ways this time. So when I got hired at LucasArts, it was just after they shipped Grimm, and I knew back then, I was like, oh, I just missed it. It's like this cool project, and I missed it. So I got a call from Peter McConnell back in August of last year, so that was 2014, asking me if I knew of anybody who had a DLT backup tape machine. Like, I might actually have one of those. And I said I'd go check in my storage, and sure enough, I did have one. I actually had found it when I was first building this current recording studio. Somebody left it on the dumpster while I was taking garbage out. I'm like, DLT deck. That could be useful. So I just put it in my storage, and I never even plugged it in. Had no idea if it worked. So I picked it up from storage, and I brought it down, and I plugged it into my old G4, which is sitting in the closet still. And the thing came right to life. I installed Retrospect and all the tools we used to use way back when to do archives, and tested it thoroughly because I don't want to put Grimm tapes in there without knowing, does this machine actually work? Fortunately, there was a tape in the machine, so I just erased that tape, whatever it was, because that's somebody's tape, and did a full backup of one of my drives and restored it, tested all the data, and it all worked. So I called Peter and said, so yeah, I have a tape machine that's working. So they brought over, Matt Hansen came over with 13 tapes, many of which were unlabeled, and I went through them. 4 of the tapes were reading on my machine, and the rest were not. So then I needed to find more machines or figure out why they weren't reading. So I tracked down another DLT machine on eBay, offered them $40 for it, and then said, by the way, can you ship that next day to me from New York? So I paid 3 times the amount for the shipping as I did for the drive. It arrived and it didn't work. The drive didn't function. So then they said, another guy I was talking with found a drive and brought it over and plugged it in, and all the other tapes read. So I was able to rebuild all the catalogs and restore all the data and hand that over. And then a couple months later, Peter called and said, so we're going to be recording the orchestra, and I'd like you to mix the orchestral mixes like we did with Broken Age. I said, please? Can I pay you to do that? Almost. So we started on that in October, and wow, what magic! I mean, because one of the cool things about the Grimm orchestral stuff is that there was a lot of live musicians on the Grimm recordings in the first place, and they actually used the old recordings with the new orchestral parts. So the orchestra actually plays along with things that were recorded 17 years earlier, which is pretty damn cool, and it sounds so good.
So can you give us a little sample
Sure,
of how that
sure.
all worked out?
So this is the signpost cue from Grimm Fandango. So there's bassoon parts. There's actually an old bassoon part from 17 years ago that starts here, and then the new bassoon is playing along with it. So this is the old, which is pretty cool.
did you decide how much of the original should be left in?
That was mostly up to Peter. I mean, Peter would provide to me, well, the first thing he would do is go through the tracks that I had given him off of the DLTs. And then he decided which things they were going to record with the orchestra. And then the things that were live before that were not synthesizer or samplers, he, I believe, kept most of that. Some of those, I think he replaced some of the samples of things like, we're still using some samples, so like some of the percussions, you know, like he's replaced it with newer percussion samples that he uses that sound fantastic. And then the orchestra stuff is all brand new. So then he would give to the orchestra sessions, there would be prelays of all those different types of sounds, you know, so it would just basically be a stem. And then the orchestra would play along with, you know, as if it was just, I don't know if they were hearing that in the cans. I would have to assume they were, because they were all on headphones. So when the orchestra stuff is all finished, then that all comes back here. Peter comps together the takes that he likes and then hands them over to me, and I edit it all down. So generally, it's what I have is what he's already decided, and I'm just going to make it sound as good as I can, which in this case is not hard. It sounds pretty great. So The Walking Dead, very, very cool project to be involved with. We recorded all the dialogue for the first season was done here in this room. Most of the second season, I think, was done in this room as well. The Wolf Among Us, that was also done here. So the processes are pretty similar. It's a little different between the two seasons because Telltale wanted to make some changes. They're always trying to get better performances, which is great. I like good performances. So what we typically do is we record one line of dialogue at a time. There's one actor in the room at a time, and that actor is going to read the line, you know, maybe 2 times, 3 times. We generally have, so there's an engineer, the actor, the director, and probably a director from Telltale is here. It might be a writer, or it might be both. Depends on what the session's going to be like. So they'll provide context to the actor, and the actor is going to try to be in the right state. And we generally have to remember what the previous actors were doing that interacted in those particular scenes, which is part of the challenge. But it's most of the time we know what's going on, and it's pretty easy. But sometimes you get something where, you know, we've given the actor the direction of, like, you know, okay, so just do kind of a hushed whisper. Okay, I'm going to go over here. And then the next actor came in and somebody remembered, oh, this was there's somebody on the other side of the wall, so you got to, hey, come over here. It's like, oh, those don't go together, do they? So when we do pickup sessions, we'll re-record some of those things.
Okay, and I see here you have a sign that says no line reads. So
yes.
What are line reads and why do you not want them?
So a lot of actors prefer not to have line reads. A line read is when the director gives them their perfect version of the line. So if the line is, hey, come over here, me telling them how to read it. And some actors are okay with it, but generally you try to avoid it. And the idea being that the actor's going to breathe life into the character. You want them to do that. That's what you're hiring them for. They're supposed to be able to act, right? So we generally try to avoid that, and then we sometimes joke around about it in here as well. We try to have a lighthearted, fun atmosphere in the control room, because you spend, you know, between 6 and 12 hours a day recording dialogue. It's a long day. So yeah, gotta keep it. Even when you're doing a zombie game, you gotta keep it fun.
I imagine a lot of the zombie groans were a lot of fun to do.
Well, none of those happened here, actually. All of those were done at Telltale, so the sound designers were involved with that, and they would grab people from around the building. What I understand is that they used Snickers bars and other things. They would get them to, like, take a bite of a Snicker bar, you know, things like that in their little recording booth. So I wasn't involved with that at all, though.
One of the things that struck me about the session today was how quickly the actor came in and without any sort of warm-up just began going. Is that normal to go that fast through the lines?
Absolutely. In fact, sometimes we go even faster. The record holder is Dominic Armato, who's Guybrush Threepwood, and he did 250 lines per hour on Tales from Monkey Island. And you know, it's a union gig, so we can only work him 6 hours a day, right? because that's it. You're done. After 6 hours, it's over. And he would say, so let's just get this through. And he'd just keep going. He's like, okay, we can do whatever he wants to do. We just can't tell him not to, right? So, yeah, the thing about Dominic is he basically just steps in front of the microphone and he is Guybrush Threepwood because he's such a huge fan of Monkey. So that was just magic, you know.
And so how long does it normally take to do a recording session for a game? Like something like The Walking Dead, how many days are you in here?
It's usually about 3 to 4 weeks worth of recording sessions. Yeah, usually 6 to 7 hours a day, and then all that editing as well. And then it's about a week's worth of time to do all the mastering on the files once they're edited.
They call him Jory. Jory. Studio Jory. Master of the audio world.
You're not supposed to do that stuff when I'm not in record, dude.
Sorry, I've got it.
Oh, that's true. Somebody's recording. I keep asking why these systems don't record when I'm not in record. This is 2015, right? Whenever you're ready, you let me know.
Okay.
I won't be able to see you anymore.
Tarzan.
You want another Tarzan?
I want another Tarzan.
Well, we can do a bunch of them after you do death sounds.
Yes.
Then we can think about Tarzan again.
I'll be all Rasta.
Okay. All right, you ready to try some of these?
Sure.
Okay, so the first one we're gonna do is laughs.
Ho 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 ho. Yeah. Ha 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 ha.
But do these as really short. Think of it, you as you're watching the gameplay. Remember, he's like swinging and jumping and things like that. Think of a laugh each time he does one of those jumps or swings.
Okay. Ho ho ha 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 ho ha ho.
Keep it Surfer Boy though.
Ha ha ho ha 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 hoo hoo yeah woo.
Awesome. Number 3.
Wicked. Wicked.
Ah, even better. Excellent. Number 4.
Sick. Sick.
Pretend you just watched your buddy do some really amazing move on his skateboard, half pipe or something.
Sick. Sick.
I loved that C was great, but give me another that's just kind of more down awe.
Sick.
Great. Number 5.
Crazy moves, man. Crazy moves, man.
Hang on.
What? What? What?
Great.
What's happening?
I think I love the C. It was great. All right, number 9.
Why run when you can skate? Why run when you can skate?
This is almost like a show off, like he's just passing people as they're walking down the sidewalk type of thing.
Why run when you can skate?
Yeah, do another one like that without the laugh.
Why run when you can skate?
Yeah, that was cool.
Sure.
Yeah. All right, number 10.
Awesome. Awesome.
More in awe.
Awesome.
And faster.
Awesome.
There it is.
Ready? Oh my God, that was awful. That was awful. Oh my God, that was terrible. I'm trying to do it as him, and he would do it like, oh, yeah, dude, I'm Tarzan. Oh my God. Okay. I want to stay in him. Oh, that's awful. I'm trying to think of how to do this. This is terrible. Oh, Let's see. Oh! You're ruining our film. Wow. Yeah, I don't think I can compete too much.
No, you're imitating it. It's totally okay to imitate it and do it badly.
All right, and we're still trying to stay. I'm gonna try to stay in the character. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. I think we got it.
All right. Oh, that might be the worst thing I've ever done.
But fun.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Fun indeed.
Good work.
All right, thank you.
So what we recorded earlier, I'll open it just so you can see what the session file looks like, the way I left it, basically, which is that this is what it looks like. There's basically just a list of files, and that's it. So I can go into these files and play the takes.
Me see you first.
That was a cute one to choose. Yeah.
Watch the snakes. Watch the snakes.
That's probably the take I would use. So I've got all these files, and the Pro Tools session is really completely meaningless to me at the end of the session, which is weird for people who don't work in games. But what I'm going to do is I will then take I'll take the dialogue and I will drop it into a folder. So let's just grab the ones we recorded earlier. So this is character's name is Cedar, and we'll put him at the root level of the project here. And I need to go get my tab delimited file for renaming, which is going to be in scripts. Rage Squid, tab. All right, so when I generated the scripts, which I do with a FileMaker database, I then end up with, I create a tab delimited export of the entire script for that character. And then I've got a program I've written for myself that lets me export a version that's ready to name the files with. So let me just name that. That's going to be Action Hank is the project. The character is Cedar, and it's Cedar A. And now I can use a better finder rename to rename our files. So here's Cedar. Let's drop it in. Get rid of that. Let me go find. And it automatically has it gives me a preview of all the file names. I can rename that. And now I have a folder filled with named files, which are ready to be edited. And they're named .wave. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
And I noticed you did some ad-libbing on the lines as well a little bit. Is that also sort of the remit of the voice director to change lines sometimes if they don't feel that it's really in character?
Again, it really depends on the client. I always get what they wrote, but then I will also happily rewrite things if I think that it could be better. One project I did, the writing was really difficult. They kept writing very wordy things. It was clear that the writers were very overburdened. There were 2 writers, and they didn't. I always tell writers that they should read their dialogue at the end of each day to the other person. Actually, I'm going to give you my dialogue. You read my dialogue to me, and then we have to figure out what does and doesn't work. These guys didn't have time for anything like that. So we would get lines like, after we finish up here, we're going to be going downstairs. It's like, how about after we finish up here, we're going downstairs? Does that work? And so we rewrote probably 40% of the script on the fly. And in the post-mortem, they were like, oh, and next time we do a project together, could you please tell the actors not to ad-lib so much? Like, yeah, okay, we'll tell them that if you'll promise to have your writers read your stuff out loud. So yeah, it's so as you can see, I've got the director's notes here with all the different circled takes from as we were recording. I kept track of what, since I was directing while I was recording in this case. So the next step would be to then go in and edit that dialogue. So give me a sec while I downsample it to something we actually want to deliver. I record everything at 4824, but the client doesn't really want 4832. Client doesn't want 32-bit files, and not all software is compatible with editing it either. So I always just downsample it to 4824 before I start. So we've got Cedar. Another little trick I use is I've got a program that will automatically subtract 1 day off of the files, so that when I open a file and the program, the audio editor, modifies it, I can see where I left off, because I don't really care what day it was last modified, truly. So it shows me now all my files were modified yesterday, even though I recorded them today. So let me open up Peak, and I need to open back up the Pro Tools session so we can just pass the audio through it. I can usually go about, I typically edit about 50 to 80 lines per hour. It really just depends on the project. Why are you beeping at me? Oh, that's why. Okay, so see what this looks like. So in this case, I've got, there's my B take.
Too slow, bro. Too slow.
Turn that off. So I'll just
too slow. Too slow, bro.
That's one line. I want them to all be pretty neutral. That way they could be in any space. So these lines of dialogue, if you put reverb on them, could sound like they're in a big hall, or they could sound like they're outdoors. Or they should sound pretty dead. Yeah.
Come on, dude.
So the editing really just goes like this. You just go through the files one at a time, looking. So take once the B take of Wicked and slice away the crap. Remove the heads and tails, fade in, fade out.
Wicked! Wicked!
Listen to it and just move on to the next one. And once it's all done, then go through the whole thing and decide what's too loud, what's too soft, make them all appear to sound the same level. Boost them up probably 14 dB, because everything has to be loud. It just won't be heard over the top of everything else if it's not. Yeah. So that's the process, really. So I could show you a little bit of Earthlock. That's a cool project I'm working on. It's a Norwegian game company. And what's cool about that is that there's just all kinds of weird creatures in the game. So let me find Pat. Pat is probably the coolest of all of them. Just let it switch over the audio engine. So this game is a JRPG style game, and there's just a ton of characters that are either companions or they're enemies. And then, so the way I like to sound design is I generally work in Pro Tools. I make multiple layers of sounds, and I make multiple versions of each sound that needs to be in the game. And then I'll batch out all of those sounds into separate files, put them into the implementation tool, which is Fabric in this case, and then set them up so that the layers just all randomize. So this character has like 9 layers of sounds playing at times. So you end up with I've got an animation, which I'm not sure how visible that is, but he does some neat stuff. Let me just make sure we're set up to output on this system. We are Pan for bouncing. Get the panning turned off. I just did this character a few days ago, so he's still fresh. So you've got lots of different layers. So basically, I have 11 animations, and each animation I make 4 different versions of the sounds for. And then, like, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 layers just on this one sound. So here's he's got a low frequency ratchet and a high frequency ratchet. That sound there, it's actually cicadas. You know, you use whatever makes the right sound, right? He's got that sound and this little mechanical thing going on. Retracting his legs. A little motor whirring. A little metallic rattling. Big metallic rattling. And his vocalizations. So it's all together is. And then there's 4 versions. But he's got all kinds of different animations. It's like he collapses to defend himself. Or he does all kinds of cool stuff. That's when he dies. Sometimes I don't make multiple versions or too many versions of each layer. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I could say that the job is a lot of work, but it's also a lot of fun. So, you know. You know, there was another character I was working on. Oh, he actually has a little thank you. That's kind of neat. So if you hear his vocalization, it actually sounds like he's saying thank you. No, that's not his vocalization. His vocalization is here. So that when you heal him.
And so how much guidance are you given as far as...
Very little. These guys are really cool. They just basically let me do whatever I want. And then they go, oh, that's not what that's supposed to sound like. We didn't envision it sounding like that. And I say, well, that's what it sounds like. And they go, okay. It's kind of great. Other projects sometimes are a lot more difficult about what they want, and which is great when people really know what they want. When they just let me have free reign, it's kind of fun because I can make things and go, oh, I think it sounds like this. And more often than not, if they sit with it for a week or so, they can't imagine it sounding like anything else ever again, which is great. So.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's fun. So you end up with these long sessions of just tons of layers. There's a total of 17 layers of things going on here. But they don't all happen on every animation. This is more like musical things, but there's always something weird somewhere. Always one of my favorites. I just love that it has a little smile on it too. Or if you have a dog, which you do, every dog immediately gets the squeaker out of whatever chew toys you get. So it's like, collect the squeakers. When we were doing For the Birds, after For the Birds actually, Ralph, the director, was telling me that they were making little bird toys. I actually have a bunch of them. And the company making them sent him a box of squeakers. I'm like, I want that box. He says, I had to ship it back to them when it was done. I'm like, I want that box. Give me every squeaker that you could possibly find. Yeah, you never know what you're going to find. Yeah. These are fun too because you can do cool stuff. Yeah, I mean, if you do it right, you can sometimes get them to make kind of weird stuttery noises. No toolkit is complete without a train whistle. I actually have it's not here right now, but I have a pneumatic bellows train whistle that you can hear about a mile away.
Wow.
Pretty cool. It's a cool little toys, yeah. Yeah, since most toys nowadays have electronic chips and stuff in them, just using you can't find stuff in toy stores, but hunting stores are still really useful, right? So you can there's a squirrel call. But if I take something like this and then pitch it up or pitch it down, you can do weird stuff with it. I'm just noticing this weird purple thing that I've had around for a while. It's filled with slime, and it looks like the slime's kind of separating. I've had it for about 15 years, but make cool sounds. So this thing you could use to add as a sweetener for breaking bones, or you just pitch it up. It sounds a little plasticky by itself, but with other things, you just never know when you need something like this. More animal calls, Cool by itself, but you can also take it apart, which is how I did for the birds. So you can suck air back through it and play with the reed. Right, so you can make an animal talk that way. It's performable. So when I did For the Birds, that's what we did. Is I needed something that the director could perform, because otherwise, I didn't know what the bird was supposed to be saying, but he did. So this is exactly how we did. This isn't the actual thing we used. That one belonged to a Pixar employee, but yeah. But yeah, fun stuff you can do. End up spending hundreds of dollars on things that you don't hunt with. All kinds of hunting. There's a mallard duck call, and this one's fun. This could be loud. This is a long-range baby jackrabbit predator call, and you're supposed to go pretty loud with it, right? Are you ready for loud? Oh, okay. Well. Want to try again? Okay. It's really loud, yeah. But yeah, you can play with that. So yeah, good stuff to sweeten with. But you can also play with this too. You take it apart and I think I would probably use hard to control. Can't recall if I've ever actually used it on a project. You go to the store, you just buy way too many hundreds of dollars of stuff. This is a big barrel mallard and a double reed Cajun squeal mallard. Yeah, the wooden ones tend to work better because the reeds aren't made out of plastic. So. This one's a cow elk. It's hard to control, but it's kind of cool. You could use that for vocalizations of like a fly or something, what I would generally do with this is, record probably like 10 or 15 minutes of it and then cut little bits out of it. Go, oh, that fits. And look, it's a hot new item.
So is that meant to call a cow? Is that what it's called?
It says capable of reproducing all cow sounds. So I guess the idea is that you make the cow sounds so that the bull will come. It says this new elk call is capable of reproducing all cow and calf sounds. Newly designed mouthpiece adds realism and ease of use. Grasp this CEO3 by the lanyard ring between your thumb and index finger. Softly bite down on the mouthpiece and begin to blow air into the call. It even tells you what kind of sound. It says the note you produce should make the yaw sound. The sound you have just produced is now referred to as a mew, which is a common vocalization that the cow, calf, and bull elk communicate with daily. So yeah, I think it's supposed to attract the other. I have this cool one, but the rubber band seems to have broken. Yeah, it's not functional at the moment. I'll have to get a new rubber band. Yeah, just collect stuff. The bag of tricks. You start feeling like singing the Felix the Cat song after a while. And maybe it all fits in again. What's in here? The saxophone mouthpiece and a couple of reeds,
Well, that's great. If
Thanks.
there's anything else you would like to share with your fans and followers out there, do you want to maybe talk a little bit about HTML5 audio?
The web audio? I've been following that for a little bit. I haven't had as much time lately to do that. I've built actually some cool things with it. I don't know if any of it works still. Let's see if is that even on this machine? I don't know if it's on this machine. I built a little prototype to see if the mastering tool that I had in mind, a custom-built mastering tool for dialogue, could actually save a tremendous amount of time. And right now it takes about 48 hours to do around 2,700 lines of dialogue, which is a lot of time you spend, mostly because we're constantly switching between lots of different tools that are designed for something completely other than mastering. And so I built something that basically did it using HTML5 audio and then rendered the files after I made all my decisions using a bash script. And it actually took that 48-hour job down to 2.5 hours. So yeah, HTML5 is pretty cool because I'm not much of a programmer. I can code, but I don't ever call myself a programmer. I can solve problems, but it ain't pretty. It's a programmer's job to fix the crappy code that I write, but it will work. It just might not account for all possible edge scenarios, right? And it won't handle the errors very gracefully. And so I never coded for audio before. Mostly I do like text manipulation, things like that, websites and little tools, right? Things that just solve my problems. And so writing code in HTML5 with the web audio API was just freaking amazing. I mean, it was the first time I wrote something that actually processed audio. I'm like, wait, that was easy? Huh, okay. I'm like, I had set aside like 6 hours to just try and write a little bit of code, and I did it in 10 minutes. I'm like, well, now what? I've got a whole day to waste now. So I got to play around with some more stuff. I mean, I do surround in here, so I was able to play around with the 5.1 output and HTML5 audio, which is pretty cool. And there's just really cool things you can do with it.